Welcome back. In this video, we're going to test your understanding of almost everything we covered in the first section about the basics of C#. So you'll be working with numbers, strings, variables, and of course, you'll need to research how to do something that we haven't yet learned. Again, this is such an awesome way to learn. Encountering problems and solving them on your own without me guiding you is crucial for your growth as a C# developer. Alright, so let me show you what I would like you to create on your own. So the final result is going to look something like this. I've got a C# script called section1 test with these public variables. So one for a first name, another for a last name, and lastly one for the birth year. And then, when you press the play button, you get this. First of all, we are printing a simple line saying what your first name and last name are. Then, on the second line, it tells you what your initials are, so the first letter of your first name with the first letter of the last name. On the third line, we want to give the length of the full name. Now, the next one is the one where you'll have to research. I want you to choose a random letter from the first name variable and print it out. I'll let you figure out how to do that. Okay, following that, we want to print out the birth year, but most importantly, we want to calculate the age from the birth year. And for the last line, we want to print out the number of days that we have been alive for. That's it. So this exercise is quite challenging, so do your best and do the most possible. But if you followed along with all the previous tutorials and exercises, and you do a little bit of research, I have no doubts that you can manage. If for whatever reason you can't figure out how to do one problem, just skip it, it's alright. Okay, so pause the video here, good luck, and I'll see you with the solution. Let's get started right away. So the first thing we need to do is create a new C# script. I'll call it section1 test, but you can name it anything you want. Then we will remove the variable script from our game object and replace it with our new one. Let's now double click on it to start coding. So as we saw, we need to start off by creating three public variables. So the first one was a public string variable called first name, and I'll not give it a value, so I'll put a semicolon right after the name. Then we need another public string variable for the last name. Our third and last public variable is an integer called birth year. Alright, if you now save your script and go back inside of Unity, you'll see that these three variables show up inside of the inspector. Awesome. Now let's tackle the first problem. So this one here is very simple. We just want to print out your name is, and then print out the first name and last name. So I'll go inside of my start function, and I'll print out the string your name is, plus the first name variable, plus the last name variable. So here we're concatenating our three strings together. We now have to add a space at the end of is, and also a space in between the first name and last name. So I'll create a string with just a space inside of it. And that's it. Okay, now let's do the second problem. So in this one, we wanted to print out the initials of our name, which means the first letter of the first name and last name. So I'll start off by printing a simple string saying your initials are, then add a space. We're then going to add to it the first name variable with an index of 0, which should get you the first letter. Remember, indexes start at 0. And then we'll also add the last name variable of index 0. Don't forget to add a semicolon at the end of your lines. Let's move on to the next one. In this one here, we want to print out the length of our full name. So let's first print out the length of your full name is, plus, instead of parentheses, first name plus last name, dot length. So remember, parentheses get called first. So we're concatenating the first name and last name variables into one, and then we're checking the length of that new string. So guys, it's really important that you understand that there are always many ways to solve the same problem. So if you're able to make it work doing something else, that's awesome. This is just one example of how you could do it, so keep that in mind throughout this solution. Alright, so the next one was the one you had to research for. So we want to print out a random letter from the first name variable. So remember, the way you can retrieve a specific letter is by writing the string, so in our case the first name variable, and then putting a pair of square brackets and writing the index of the letter you want to retrieve. So all we have to do is generate a random number between 0 and the length of the first name string and put that random number inside of the square brackets. So I'm going to create a int variable called random number. I'm not going to make this one public. Now I need to generate a random number and store it inside of my variable. So if you're able to research correctly for that by searching for something like random number C# unity, you would have seen that we have to write random.range and then put a pair of parentheses. Inside of those parentheses, we need to type in the min number and then the max number. So in our case, we want to start at 0 and go all the way to the first name dot length. So this line will generate a random number between 0 and the length of your first name variable. Alright, so now we'll just print, here is a random number from your first name, and then add to it the first name variable with an index of random number. A huge congrats if you're able to figure that one on your own. It wasn't easy. Let's move on. The next one we need to do is print out the birth year and also the age. So we need to calculate the age from the birth year. I'll create an int variable called age, and to calculate the age we just need to subtract the birth year from the current year. So by the time of recording, that is 2018 minus birth year. With the age calculated, we'll now print out you were born in plus the age variable plus, which means that you are, plus the age variable plus years old. Now just add the .toString to convert the numbers into strings. Let's now do the final problem, which was to print out the number of days that you have been alive for. So I will create an int variable called days alive that I'll set equal to age times 365. Now we can print out you have been alive for plus days alive plus days. Don't forget to add the .toString after the days alive variable. Okay, perfect. We have now completed the challenge. Let's save our script and test all this out inside of Unity. Okay, so I'm going to fill in my variables with my information. So the first name is Liam, the last name is Khalees, and the birth year is 2002. So if I now press the play button, we'll see that everything works amazingly. And most importantly, if we press play multiple times, you should see that the random letter changes almost all the time. I want to give you a huge congrats on finishing this section and this exercise. You're making amazing progress. You should now be quite comfortable using numbers, strings, and variables in C#, which are tools that we use all the time when creating games. You also are developing your problem-solving skills, which is maybe the most important skill that you need to have as a game developer. Anyways, I'll see you in the next section. Cheers!